In this video, we are going to solve some equations that involve fractions, the dreaded fraction, but we are going to try to make this easier. If you don't want to deal with fractions, you don't have to deal with fractions. Your final answer might be a fraction, but you really won't see that until the very, very last step, which makes it reasonable. So the trick is you want to clear out fractions. And how do we do that? We're going to multiply each term. So like right here is 1, 2 terms. This is 1, 2, 3 terms by the least common denominator. Okay, you just got to figure out what's the least common denominator with all your fractions. Well, if it's just one fraction, then it's very straightforward. That is your least common denominator. So my least common denominator for this problem would be 3. So what I would do is I would multiply every term by 3. Multiply by 3, multiply by 3, whether it has a fraction or not. Because if I'm solving equations, if I had just one problem or one piece of this, I have to do everything else kind of equivalently. So if I multiply one side by 3, I multiply the other side by 3. Okay, if I multiply one term by 3, I have to multiply all of them by 3. So here, this multiplication of 3 undoes the division of 3. And so now I just have a 4d equals 36, no more fraction. So then now I can do normal. I'm going to divide by 4, so d equals 9. Okay. So again, I only have one denominator, so my least common denominator is that denominator. So I'm going to multiply every single piece by 4. Multiply by 4, multiply by 4, multiply by 4. So 4 times 2x is 8x. This one, that 4, cancels that 4. So then it's just a 3. Plus 3 equals 4. No more fractions. And then I just solve again like normal. So if I have a plus 3, I want to move it to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 3. That's going to leave me with an 8x on that side. 3's go away. 4 minus 3 is 1. And I divide by 8. And like I said, your final answer might still be a fraction. Not every time, but sometimes. But I didn't have to deal with that at all until the very, very end. So, okay. And then on this one, I have a 4 and a 3. So my least common denominator is going to be 12. All right, so let me write this one out a little bit more. So I'm going to have a negative 1/4 x equals a 9 minus a 2/3 x. Okay, so I have 3 terms, and I'm going to multiply every single one of those by 12. Multiply by 12, and I'm going to multiply by 12. All right, so here's kind of a cool way to multiply fractions times a whole number. I take the 4, or the 12, I divide it by the denominator and multiply it by the numerator. And I know that division is going to work out clean because it's a common denominator. So if I take 12 divided by 4, I get 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Now, it's not a fraction, so I'll just multiply. So 12 times 9 is 108. And then minus 12 divided by 3 is 4, times 2 is 8. All right, so now I solve like normal. I'm going to take that 8x and I'm going to shift it over to the other side because I'll leave the 108 by itself. So I'll add 8x. It also will make my variable positive by adding 8x, kind of a bonus. So that's going to leave me with 5x equals 108. Divide by 5. Divide by 5. That doesn't go in evenly, so I'm just going to leave it as 108 over 5. Unless I have to do this, then I'll have to see how many times 5 goes into 108, what the remainder is, and then I'd have a mixed number out of that. Okay, so let me do one word problem here. So this one says we have a problem that is involving rate, time, and work. So there is an equation for this, and it is your work is equal to rate times time. Okay, so the W represents your work, The R represents, your rate, and the T represents your time. Okay, so it says a carpenter can install 1 door in 3 hours. All right, find the number of doors the carpenter can install in 40 hours. So what we're going to do is we're actually, we're going to do something a little bit different than this. Our other option is kind of depends on the given information. We're going to use a proportion on this. Okay, there might be some other situations that we have to kind of do this rate times time is equal to your work. But on this one, if we can install 1 door in 3 hours, so 1 door in 3 hours, then what about 40 hours equals X doors in 40 hours. Okay, so this is not the only way to solve this, but this is one way to do it. You could instead figure out a rate associated with it, and then you can multiply that rate by 40. But anyway, so we cross multiply. So we have X times 3 is going to be 3X. 1 times 40 is 40. Divide that by 3. Now, I don't want to leave it as 40 over X because I want to know how many doors I'm installing. So like 40/3 of a door doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So instead, I'm going to get 3 goes into 40 13 times, which is 39. And if I subtract 39 away from 40, I'll have 1 left over. So if I worked a full 40 hours a week, and I was installing doors that whole time during my 40 hours of work, and at my rate of 1 door per 3 hours, I could get 13 and a fourth, not a fourth, 13 and a third doors done in that amount of time. Okay. All right, so that first part was solving equations that are going to involve fractions. This one ended up I didn't have to have a fraction on it because I had kind of more of a proportion situation, but there's going to be some others that are going to are going to have fractions, and we're going to have to clear them out and kind of deal with the fractions, but we can make it easier for ourselves. And that'll be on the next video.